Hello and welcome to Drive's Workflow That Works webinar with your hosts David Saline and Jim Saeli. Over to you guys.
Woohoo. All right.
All right. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, depending on where you're located in the United States.
Yeah, that would be afternoon, David. It's not good morning. It's way past good morning here.
It's still morning in my area. We just barely got our first cup of coffee in, so we're a little later than you.
Yeah, we're waiting for lunch. Well, actually, lunch is already passed. Oh well, I missed it. I think
Okay,
I'll survive.
so today we're going to address workflow that works for you. And I kind of want to start off with this, Jim, and really
Mhm.
just put a whole thing to put in the image of everybody that's listening, shop owners out there, and everybody that's trying to improve their workflow. Everything we do for workflow, everything we're trying to do to improve workflow, make it more efficient, putting systems in, putting operations, policies, procedures, everything you do in your shop is really to do one thing. And that's what the shop does and what you exist for, and that's to sell billable hours. Yes, we all sell parts and we have to mark those parts up. It's part of the equation. But really, what does a shop have to offer? They have experience, they have guidance, they have expertise in fixing cars. And how we make our profits with our business is selling billable hours.
Yeah,
So,
it's our time. It's our time that we spend working on things and getting things finished, right? So
cor-
yeah.
correct. So, what I want everybody to really think about is when you're thinking about your workflow, what affects those billable hours? What increases those billable hours? What makes it easier to make those billable hours? And that's what workflow is. And it's such a big topic.
Well, it sounds simple, David. Come on, it's easy. It's just you got to get more stuff through the door, right? It's
Yeah, get more work through the door, but everything that affects that. This comes down to how's the vehicles come in and out? How are they dispatched to the technicians? Which jobs are sent to each technicians? How are they ordering their parts? How are they inspecting the vehicles? What is the process for upselling the work for the vehicles? What is the quality control procedures they do for it, test driving, all the things that go along with repairing the job. But it even comes down to where are the inefficiencies? How's your bays laid out? How do your technicians get to the tools or parts they need? It's such a big topic.
it's interesting too because there's a whole bunch of different things that go on now in shops and technology's become a big part of it. But I want to share a little picture here because when we talk about workflow and when we look at things and it is very interesting how for folks that are here that are clients of ours, we've taught workflow for many, many years, and there's many different systems and so on out there to and how to actually keep track of what's going on in the shop. But some of us are really good at keeping things uh, in our heads, and you can do that for an extended period of time. And David, it's interesting. You go back to I go back to my background in the industry, right? I started at a dealership way back in the 1980s as a lot guy moving cars around, then moved up and started working with the dispatcher of the shop. And it was a Mercedes Honda dealer where we had 20 technicians and ran 60 to 80 cars a day through the shop. And that was in my early 20s. Yeah, I know I've been around a little while, but the thing of it is, they had this route sheet, basically a big old sheet of paper that we just kept everything on and had build hours that we were keeping track of to see what was going on in the shop. And you had service advisors and you had dispatchers in a parts area, and then the technicians just worked on cars and they had a system. But the interesting thing was it was controlled chaos. It really was. It was insane. It was busy. As a matter of fact, I look back, I had high blood pressure when I was 21 years old because of that job, right? And then come to my shop, and my shop was my partner and myself. And then we signed up with Drive way back in 1997. And the interesting thing is, you got to put in workflow and system where you're keeping track of things and all of that. So I'm going to share this picture because I said I was going to share a picture, and which is just old school workflow, man. You know, it is old school workflow where it's clipboards where you're just dispatching work for the technicians, so that everybody knows what they're doing, right? And that's part of it, right? And then next to it, there's a progress board and what's going on with each vehicle. Then there's goals to share with the folks, and how do you lay out your parts? And that's why, like you said, David, there's so much to this, right?
Yeah, and how it's changed over the years.
Oh yeah,
Nowadays, parts vendors before they would drop everything off at the front desk, and now there's a lot of shops that the parts vendors deliver the parts right to the bay and to the technician that they need to deliver them to. So there's so many things that have changed in that. But you're talking about the old school workflow, and I remember my days in the dealership too, Jim. And not only was it all paper, all manual routing, but when you went, the service writer handed you a job. If you needed information on fixing that job, they told you there's the library there in the back with all the books in it. Figure
the
it out.
catalogs, the catalogs we got to
Catalogs.
look through.
Yes,
Yeah, we
and
had a rack of them.
and, and if you did go to the parts department to find the parts, you looked. I'm going to date myself too because I was at the very tail end of this. But the parts
Mm-hmm.
guy was looking up parts on microfiche.
Oh,
Uh,
that was the labor times that I looked up at Mercedes. Actually, we looked them up in microfiche readers. Don't miss
so
the little asterisks. Don't miss the little asterisk that tells you that there's additional on the bottom of the page to make sure that you're charging right. Because there's another thing that gets into it. If I'm not writing the right amount of hours down, because I'll give you a perfect example, this sticks to me to this day, and I've probably shared it. And if some of you have been in my classes, you've probably heard this before. But to replace a window regulator or motor on a Mercedes Benz, paid 5 to 8.5 or 0.8 tenths of an hour to replace a regulator or motor, which was an assembly on those vehicles, and they did them all as one piece. But the interesting thing was there was a little asterisk in those microfiche readers, and the little asterisk brought you down to does not include testing and does not include removing and reinstalling the door panel and any adjustments needed. So, like if you had a Mercedes convertible, which had frameless window, there was a whole bunch of adjustments. They went from 5 to 8 tenths to 1.8 to 2.5 hours for the same job. So,
yeah, and it's funny, we rely on the labor time guides and stuff like this, and we'll get into this more about billing on time and what you do on labor time guides and everything as we move through. But I'm thinking, Jen, let's just start off with the basics of where we're going.
yep,
Let's start with the very simplicity of it. Customer comes in, they tell the service writer what they need done. Then it's from when that customer walks out of the door and leaves their car there. To me, workflow is everything that happens from that point to when the customer picks their cars up and drives out the gate with a fixed vehicle. That's your workflow.
yep,
So it starts out, they take down the information and everything, and then you got to worry about dispatching it to the technicians. But before they get to dispatching it to the technicians, Jim, there's a piece of workflow that a lot of shops miss, and some
mm-hmm,
technologies, some shop management systems and stuff now help assist with this. But that's the first step of the workflow is with the service writer. It's not
yep,
only getting all the information, but it's like the what I call a pre-trip or the pre-inspection with the service writer. Walking the car with the customer, noting anything the service writer sees that they may need to fix, or jogging the customer's brain on things that they may not remember that they need to fix. And I'll give you an example, things you don't remember. I have a farm truck. I drive out to my farm on the weekends and everything else. Got caught out there in a rainstorm about a month ago. And I started thinking about it. Wow, I wish I should have took the vehicle in and had somebody pre-inspect it with me because when I turned the windshield wipers on and half the windshield wipers were welded to the windshield from the hot sun, and I no longer had windshield wipers, and it's raining, and I
nice.
had to sit there in the rain for an hour before it let up so I could drive home. So I'm
Oh,
sitting there
geez.
going, why didn't you think of this before?
Right, right. Well, yeah, that's all the aspects of handling that customer and taking care of their problems, right? And the workflow is each aspect of what we need to do to get the car from in the door to back out to the customer. And on the collision side of things, they call it keys to keys, when you're taking those keys to when you're bringing those keys back, and what are the bottlenecks that stop that. So yeah, it becomes a big topic for sure. And it's funny, you're talking about, I showed the picture of the workflow, right? Of just a quick idea of it. And certain shops do things certain ways, right? And they everybody, you all have your own personality on how you do things, which is great. But the interesting thing that you run into is at times what'll happen is you put a system together and people are using it, or they understand it or they don't understand it. And I shared that picture before, and I was going to share this one, so let me do it really quick. But this is another workflow. This is another workflow. There's a board, a vehicle, there's a board, there's bins for the repair orders, and that system's not quite used as well as the other one, as you can see. And I understand why that happens. And David, you've run across this as well. You get in the chaos of the day-to-day stuff, and things drop out, right? You have a system, and then the system stops getting used. And how much
Yeah.
time is that costing you? What are you losing because of that? So I just wanted to share that because it just was like, whoa, look at that. What's
Yeah,
going on
so
here?
like I said, going back to it, the first step of your workflow is your service writer. It's the check-in of the vehicle, it's getting all the data from the customer. And even the service writer has a big role in this that helps the workflow with the technicians. And when I say this, let me give you an example. A service writer can take a lot of detail. The vehicle is making noise when I make a right turn and hit my brakes versus you know, vehicle makes noise, fix problem. The more detail they get, the better and the easier it is for the technicians and um, the rest of the crew to figure out what's going on as they're going through there.
Right. Well, so David, I have a question for you. So what did you find was the best? So you were a tech for many years, and what was some of that information that you did not get from the front counter that you needed when you went to diagnose a problem?
Usually, it's the data that I didn't get from it was more like um, the specifics, when it was doing it, how it was doing it, why it was doing it. Now, there's certain repairs that it doesn't matter what you put, remove and replace brakes, remove and replace headlights, stuff like that doesn't matter. But when you're getting into the more tricky diagnostic, check engine light comes on only after I fill up with gas for the first 15 miles. You don't get that information, but as a technician, you go get it, check engine light on. There's a difference to trying to figure out what that thing is. You can go and look into the computer and see 50 historic codes on there and try to address every one of them and still may never fix the problem without all the detail from the customer.
Yeah, and here's an interesting thing, because you just made me remember this. When I was at your shop, there was a moving van or something that was there, and you guys had fixed it. It had no power, and then the guy took it, and then it was back the next day. Do you remember that by chance? Guy was
It's been
running
a
up
few
the.
years ago, but yeah, but it's also the customers can be part of the issue on that
That's right. Yeah.
because the customers themselves can often cause this issue with you.
Yep. Yeah, they don't.
And because remember, they don't know exactly what's really going on themselves with their vehicle. And they brought it to you because you're the expert in it.
Yep.
And when it comes down to it, they just think, oh, I'm just going to give them a little information, they're going to fix it. So getting more detail from the customer is always like when, where, how. And in some cases, you may even have to ask them to, hey, can we go for a test drive and duplicate what it's doing? Why the
Right.
customer's there? Because it's so much harder to find out what's wrong with the vehicle and calling the customer and getting that over the phone. So a lot of times it's about gathering all that data correctly when the customer's there. But then once you got all that data, what do you do with it? How do you dispatch it to the technicians? Every shop has a different level of technicians too. You don't send your heavy diagnostics guy out to your lube tech in shops. And now I've seen some shops have to do that in emergencies because hey, just need to please the customer and we need to get somebody looking at it. Plug a machine into it, pretend like you're doing something until we can get somebody free. But there's the big point that I want to go on there is how do you know, really pick out your technicians and do the right ones for it?
Yeah.
So it's to me that's all part of the workflow, and this is a very big point of workflow. A lot of people miss, and that's what is the actual skill list of your technicians? And does
Yeah.
your service writer know their skills so that they can assign the work correctly?
Yes, absolutely. I'm looking at I'm looking at the chat here, and Danielle had written that she actually has questions in there laminated at the desk for reference, so that they can actually be there and get that information from the customers, and so getting the techs on board with it, which is a very good point, Danielle, is getting them to give you the questions. They're the ones that know the questions to ask when they have certain types of problems. I've actually recommended and seen some shops that have done this as well, and they will actually put in to handle some of these things a canned job for diagnosis of certain types. And the canned job actually has the questions written in the canned job, so the service advisor can write those into the uh, the service that for the diagnosis, so the information's right there on the repair order for the technician. So that's an awesome idea, and these are things that you start seeing people get expand on it and so on and so forth, but getting everybody along with it. And David, you mentioned something that is super important. I have the lube tech that I'm sending out there just to put the scan tool on it, just so the customer sees that something's working. But a lot of times that's a good way to start getting these guys trained up on things, right? Utilizing a tool, right, that they've never done before, because my goodness. Well, again, I've been around a long time and I still like to fix things. And I have an old Mercedes now that I finally own a Mercedes Benz. I don't even want to admit how old it is and what it is, but it's all newer style CAN bus system that I never really diagnosed, but I got some diagnostic equipment, and now I'm just learning how to use the darn scan tool to get the information that I need to be able to start to figure out where to look for the problem, and how do you train guys? I, you know, we all have information, especially as owners and former technicians, and you have information on the way you do things. And a lot of times you don't think twice on how you do things or approach things. But now you have to train somebody else on it. And it's an important thing to understand. How do I train somebody else on it so you don't get this? I was at a shop and this poor technician, brand new guy, and he's doing a motor mount on a Honda, a four-cylinder Honda, front motor mount, very simple to do. And the owner goes, "Go ahead and replace that motor mount." Kid's never done it before, and he's looking at it, and he doesn't know what to do. So the owner goes, "What are you, a knucklehead? Just get your wrenches out and take the bolts out and get that motor mount out of there." So what does the kid do? He gets his wrenches out. He gets his hand tools out. He gets a long extension with a socket and a ratchet handle. He's trying to break this thing free, and the owner goes, "What are you, stupid? Get your air tools out. You're wasting time." And we take for granted sometimes these things. And it just at the end of this whole thing, what ended up happening was once he got all the bolts out, now he was trying to get the motor mount out. And then, of course, he needed to lift the motor up, which he didn't know. And the owner
Yeah.
again gave him the same type of direction that said, "Get the jack under there and get it out of here." And it's crazy how I understand why it happens sometimes too, because you are slammed with work. You got a lot going on, especially this time of year for a lot of you. Summer times is a busy time of year, and I don't have time for this. But if you don't start making time for training these folks and getting them to do things, you're you're not going to make the changes that you need to improve your efficiency in the shop, getting things through the shop, and having more folks there that can handle more of the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and you're talking about the skills list, but service writer not only needs to know which techs to assign the jobs to, which ones are faster at this, which ones can get the job in and out. But there's a key thing we did at our shop, and a lot of shops through technology, it's a lot easier to do this now. A lot of systems now, when you assign the tech the job, they know how many hours they got to do the job. They know the book time and everything else. If you're not in a system like that, no, putting somewhere on however you're dispatching the work to the technician, this is a 3 hour job. So the technician knows. And we had a running policy in my shop at all times. If a technician got a repair order and the time on there wasn't right, there was automatically triggered a meeting between the service writer and the tech. The tech would go in there and say, look, you have this down for 3 hours. There's no way I can do this job for 3 hours. Now, the outcome of that conversation depends on what really happened. Sometimes the technician had to admit that 3 hours is enough time on it and they just didn't want to work that hard. But sometimes they come up with a lot of valid points.
Yep.
Look, there's been modifications. Look at the rust. Look at this. Look at that. There's all kinds of reasons why. And then the service writer automatically can get with the customer and say, look, it's going to be actually a little bit more than what we thought because of this, this, and this. And those are all billable hours, what your shop's selling, and you don't want to miss out on. So having those types of communications in. And I'm not saying everything's got to be verbal because now in today's world, there's a lot of communications between tablets and the front desk through chats and Teams and all
Yep.
this other stuff. So it's not going to be a long, drawn out process, but it's got to be one of those that your technicians and service advisors are working on the same page and they're getting along together. And believe me, there is so many things in a shop that can break down workflow, but the number one breakdown in workflow that I've seen, and I know Jim, you may have witnessed this in my shop when you came out for my shop inspection years ago, is
Mhm.
the service writer and the technicians butting heads and fighting. If that's happening in your shop, that is a breakdown in your workflow and it is affecting your shop in major ways that you may not see.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because going to shops and actually doing an efficiency workshop in shops, sometimes it's a matter of, I will say something in that workshop that was told by the owner. The owner's been pounding people for 100 times, and I say it, and they're like, "Oh wow, that's a good idea." And the owner's scratching their head, going, "Why in the world did they all of a sudden accept it from you, but not from me?" Sometimes it's just a matter of the way you deliver the communication about that subject, or just another change in viewpoint, or saying it a different way. But the when you really look at it, it is understanding both sides of the aisle, the front and the back. And the folks up front don't necessarily know what the folks in the back go through, and the folks in the back don't know necessarily what the folks up front go through, and the information that they need, and the problems and challenges they have. They think they may know, but at the end of the day, the point is, when you communicate more about these issues and you get everybody to be a part of it, it makes a difference, right? So it's just, I have so many examples that fly through my head when I start talking about this stuff, like the one shop, um there was this was a big truck shop. There was a technician in the shop who was a service advisor. He was in his 50s, and he was like, "This is getting too tough for me. I need to work at the front counter." He lasted a month at the front counter, and then he went back into the shop. He asked the owner, he goes, "Boss, can I go back in the shop? I just can't handle it." He goes, "I'm up nights. I keep thinking about all these problems that are going on with vehicles. I wake up in the middle of the night trying to, have all these thoughts, and so on and so forth." So it's sometimes just getting them to understand the other side of the aisle, just really getting what's real to them. And it's also another shop I go to, and they were saying all the technicians were complaining about waiters, right? And they were, "Oh, lots of waiters. We got waiters. All we got is waiters. We got waiters all day long." I'm looking at the schedule. I see two waiters for the day, and then I'm like, okay, so now the guys in the back are complaining about waiters. So this is where, as an owner, you need to start looking at the bigger picture and really getting a better understanding. So while I was sitting there at the front counter in the waiting area, actually, customer went to drop their vehicle off. And they were there for an oil change and just checked the vehicle over. And she was dropping it off, and she had a friend coming to pick her up. And that's the way she was scheduled. So the service advisor, as she's sitting there taking the customer in, asks this question, even though it said in the appointment book that she was dropping it off. She had already said that somebody was coming to pick her up. She asked this question to the customer: "Oh, do you want to drop it off with me, or would you rather wait for it?" All of a sudden,
Yeah.
that became an instant wait. The customer says, "Oh, I can wait. Hold on a second." Gets on her cell phone, calls her friend, says, "Don't bother picking me up because I'm going to wait for it." There went why they were having so many waiters. So a lot of times you need to step back to see what's going on? Just observe what's happening. It's kind of like when you diagnose a vehicle, you got to just look at it and look at what's going on. I'll go back to my Mercedes that I've been messing with. I just started, there were 57 codes in that thing. It had a myriad of electrical problems. And I just had to go back and start to look at certain things. Well, it's a convertible. Guess what? Had water in it. What does water do for electronics? Not a very good thing. So just start going back, looking and observing, and then you come up with a plan of attack to start solving these problems, right? And it's also why we have our master workshops, I know, and I've done them for so many years, and we have a good group of folks now that Tony's put together to get you folks trained up on these things. And I'll tell you, if you've done some of these workshops, you should do them again, because sometimes I look at them going, I don't even realize that was in there, because the
Yeah.
problems you're having today were not the problems you were having originally. And this is always a work in progress, especially when it comes to workflow.
Yeah, Jim, our workflow is like I said, the more technicians you put on, the more service writers, the more your shop gets advanced. It changes from time to time. And like I said, there's a lot of technology out there that's changed all this right now. But I'll give you another example of where a workflow breaks down.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, this is with service writer and technicians in this combination, and it's parts. Technician runs in, tells the service writer, I need this part to finish the job. Technician walks out, I'll wait until the service writer gets me the part. Well, service writer had a customer come in, had another customer come in, had the phone ring, doesn't order the part. Well, technician's out in the back waiting for the part to come in. What's technician doing? In most cases, standing over visiting with another technician and making them unproductive.
Oh man.
So that's a big production efficiency loss that everybody doesn't realize. One technician waiting usually means they're visiting with another technician or standing over another technician while he's doing his job and causing distractions. So those are all things you watch out for. So how do you fix this? You put a parts ordering system in. A lot of it's electronic now. A technician can request it over computer, it goes right to the service desk. Service desk has a big flashing red light on their computer screen until it's done and ordered or addressed. But if you're not in one of those systems and everything, look for these problems because they're there.
Yep, absolutely. And gets back to simplicities again. Communication is the key, back to front, but it also needs to be in a way that it's written. And you talk about, David, you talk about um that technician waiting and then going back and bothering somebody else. So let's just say 5 or 6 minutes, even going to the front and then going back to the back. And then this happens 10 times a day. And each time's 5 or 6 minutes, it's an hour of lost production. And then you look at your labor rate. And let's just I'm going to do round numbers, $200, right? $200 labor rate, you lost an hour a day. I'm going to double that because we have parts and labor on the job as well, because we're selling the whole job. So now we got $400 times 5 days is $2,000 in a week, and that's $104,000 in a year just lost because of that. Oops, I did it verbally. You know that is, and it's a killer. It's an absolute killer.
Yeah, and then we have a question. Do most shops have techs write down labor times and parts requested for the service writers? Are there shops out there that have design parts department like dealers would?
Designated parts department like
Yeah.
dealers. Yeah, yeah.
It depends on the size of the shop, location of the shop, and everything else. Most shops that I see in the independent world, some do have a designated parts department, but most of them is all controlled through the service advisor.
Yeah.
But one of the things is yes, the technician should be documenting all the parts that they need for the job, so the service writer can order it and make sure they're all there. When it comes to labor times and allowing your techs to control the labor times billed to the customers, that could be very dangerous in some ways. Some ways, and I'll explain. It can be both directions. Sometimes, if your techs are paid flat rate, they're going to overinflate the hours that they need to get a good paycheck. But on the other side of it, in a technician's mind, and that's one of the things that, and some of these shop owners that may be listening may have this problem right now, is a customer comes in, needs a job done on the vehicle. Book time says it's a 2 hour job. Technician mindset is I can get this job done in a half hour, so we should only build a half hour for this job. You just lost a lot of time and money for your shop. So it's a very fine line of having your technicians write down what labor is needed and everything. And like I said, I'm not against having the technicians write down this is what I think it's going to take me to do the job. And if the service writer sees a big difference in that labor time from what the book says and what the technician says, that's where you initiate a meeting and find out why.
Yeah, and David, that's you bring up another point with this, and this question brings up another point is the labor guide is a labor guide, not the labor law, right? And me being from the Northeast and everybody that's in this wonderful section and other parts of the country as well, that where we have this wonderful thing called rust. When I went to first shops I went to when I went in the Southeast and they didn't have a torch in the shop, I'm like, how do you actually do work? And they're like, what are you talking about? I said, you ever get a vehicle from New York? And they're like, oh, yeah, we don't work on those. That's not included in the labor guide. It's a labor guide. As a matter of fact, the more that I realize this over the years of what I've done in the industry, it's interesting that it's a starting point, right? And then from that point forward, it's like you said, David, the technician that's like, oh yeah, I can do that in half an hour, even though it pays 2 hours. But how many times has he done that job, and how proficient is he, and how many tools has he bought to get good at it so that he can get work done, right? That still has value to the customer and it still has value to the shop. And you should be charging for that. Don't be afraid to charge for what it takes to fix these things. I also keep track of what's going on in the industry. Do you know the average price of a new vehicle now? Average. This is an average price of new vehicles sold in the US is over 50 grand now. So it costs a lot of money to have a vehicle. It costs a lot of money to keep these things going. So I know when I look at some of these repair bills and I cringe because I'm like, well, it doesn't take that much to do it. That's not why people come to you. People are coming to you because they drive a safe, reliable. And you got to remember that you need to charge for that. Now, just another point on Danielle's question here that I want to just touch on is this. If the techs are spending more time doing research and looking up parts and all of that because to make it easier for the front, they're actually not working on a vehicle. So it's a balancing act because I don't want to take their time away from actually getting the vehicles done, getting them diagnosed, figuring out what's happening. It gets back to what you were saying before, David, is sometimes you need to have a conversation on these things if it's an oddball problem, but a lot of things are typical. Now, some of your systems, let's get back to this, some of your shop management systems, if you know how to utilize them, they have canned jobs. You can go back and look at jobs that you've done on a previous vehicle that you know what it takes to do that. And those are some of the things that you can do to keep track of these things, so it makes it easier for you to do things when they come back in, so there is no problems and you don't have to spend a lot of time saving time. That's what we're trying to do. How can I save time, cut down on work that I do multiple times, right? Start saving jobs. Your systems will, man, it's pretty crazy what they can actually do. So
Yeah. And just another piece on this, the systems can do it, but also evaluating each job that's coming into your shop and seeing who's efficient and who's not. This gives you a training path for your technicians. If you have one technician that is failing to meet book team time on a certain job, that's most likely a training for that one technician. But if you have all your technicians in a shop that cannot meet book time on a specific job, maybe you need to adjust the labor time on that job yourself, or maybe it's a group training that everybody in the shop needs to have in there. So there's a
yeah,
lot of things to evaluate on there, but training is another one. Is how do you know what training, when to give training? I would look at the jobs I have coming in my shop, who's efficient on them and who's not efficient, and what jobs are we not efficient on or having to charge a lot of extra diagnostic time and making it a very hard sell to the customer. What do we do to make that diagnostic time shrink? What do we do to make that more efficient? Because the bottom line, what Jim and I are talking about today, is when the wrenches are turning in the back, the techs are under a hood of a car or under a vehicle, and they're not waiting on parts, waiting on authorizations. They've got the next job in front of them. They are turning build hours, and that's what we're selling in a shop is build hours.
Yeah, and that gets the work done, and that's how you get your revenue in the shop, and how you folks keep going, so that you can all do well, you can all make money. It's a win-win-win, right? It's a win for the shop because it continues to survive. It's a win for everybody that works there because they're able to provide for their families and support their families and make a good living off of what you're doing. And the customer wins because they're driving safe, reliable transportation. And it gets back to this other thing too, is this industry as a whole and the service industry as a whole. you know Dave, you ever see that David, you ever see this the guy that does dirty jobs, Mike Rowe?
Yeah.
I watched an interview with him yesterday, as a matter of fact, and he was saying that he was talking about the shipbuilding industry, seeing that they needed 400,000 jobs to fill for welders and pipe fitters, and how we tend to forget the importance of what we do, and that our industry is something that we need to keep focus on training our folks, because if we train them better, they'll stay in the industry because they should make a good living. As a matter of fact, he was talking about how these folks should be making over $100,000 a year for the work that they're doing, and they're making a good living for what they do, for their hard work. There's nothing wrong with that. So
And
the point going back to is, what you do is valuable, and don't ever forget it, no matter what we're running across here. The idea is, how can we be more efficient so that everybody's doing better?
yeah, and there's things to even look at when you're evaluating it, and I will explain some of this, and that's cost of things to upgrade your building with. And I'll use this as an example. You're in an area of the country where it's 100 degrees outside. Now, the service desk and everything has AC, but there's no AC in the back of the shop. Now, a lot of shop owners will look at that and say, okay, it's going to cost me $20,000 to put AC in the back of the shop. Now, if you look at back there at the back, how much time the guys spend cooling off or getting a drink of water or slowing them down because it's too hot out there, and turn that towards your labor rate and how many more build hours they can produce if they were in a cool, comfortable environment, that $20,000 may not be a big investment when you calculate it out over several months in the summer, several years over the time, and just just the fact that how comfortable you keep your techs and keep them working with you, because techs can leave for odd reasons, and comfortable work environment is one of them. And if you got a good tech, you want to make sure that they have a comfortable environment all the way through.
Yeah, and it's funny. As soon as you were talking about that, I was thinking about two shops. One where I was in Phoenix, Arizona, and it was in June, and it was a balmy 117 outside. He actually had he had the which is a weird thing to me because I'm from an area where there's heat and humidity. So air conditioning is the way to go, but they had swamp coolers, and it dropped the temperature in the building to the 80s, and the guys were able, the mid 80s, but the guys were able to function and work easily, and so on and so forth. And then I was at my goodness, this was a big truck shop in Dallas, Texas area. It was 95 degrees out, 98% humidity. The guys went through 2 cases of water from 5 technicians. They went through 2 cases of water that day, and their shirts went from light blue to almost black because of all the sweat, right? So the other thing too is the physical aspect of this. That's a huge point, David, because man, if your shop had air conditioning, would that be a selling factor to get technicians to work in the shop, especially in the summertime? You know, and
Okay.
there's definite ways to do that for sure. So
Yeah, so just to move forward now, I'm gonna go
yeah,
to the next step of the workflow that usually is a bottleneck, and that's parts.
yep,
Ordering parts. We've diagnosed the vehicle, we know what's wrong with it, now we're waiting on parts. This is a couple key things as a shop owner you can do. You build a relationship with your parts vendor. And with that relationship with your parts vendor, why you're building that great relationship is they making deliveries to you on the spot. You don't have to wait long for it. That's things you want to build with your relationship on there. But also, what are you doing during that time? Why they've diagnosed everything, gave you a list of parts, you're getting customer authorization, you're ordering the parts and waiting for the parts to come in. What is the technician doing? Good shops have their technicians booked up with 3 or 4 jobs. So they diagnose one, they are then going in and getting the authorization for it. They're working on diagnosing the next one and so forth. And so the technicians are always busy. So when the parts all arrive and everything's there to do the first job, they are notified and said, okay, when you get done with to a stopping point on this one, now you got everything to do this job. And it's a stacked up system. Why I say this is technicians work based upon the work they have in front of them. They show up in the morning and they have one job to do,
Yep.
and that's the only car they got to work on all day in the shop, they're going to spend all day working on that shop car. Now, the same shop, if they had 10 jobs lined up for that technician and said they all need to be done by the end of the day, same technician will probably get all 10 of those done. But they don't want to be standing around waiting. It's idle time that kills production efficiency.
Yep.
So, what is your parts ordering system? How fast are you getting your parts? Some of those shops, I'll tell you right now, there's shops out in rural areas. I was one of those. We hired a dedicated parts runner in our shop. That's all they did.
Yep.
And we gave them a company vehicle and they went back and forth, sometimes 50, 60 miles to get parts. But when we knew the parts they did, we sent them on their way and says, head toward Albuquerque to go get the parts. And we'll tell you where to stop by the time you get there.
Yeah, David, it's funny you talked about the training the delivery drivers to put the parts in certain locations, and this is actually the communication aspect to your vendors as well, to train them so they know what to do. But the interesting thing was, in a couple of locations I've been in, they're utilizing Uber drivers to deliver parts for them, right? So you have this random person come into the shop that's never been there before. And with parts, there's a number of different aspects that help with this. You know, go back to old school. There were certain people in the parts store house that I would talk to if I needed to find something. There were other people I wouldn't. There was one shop I was at. The service advisor called the parts supplier, talking old school, called the parts supplier, need a water pump for this Jeep Grand Cherokee. Part shows up, she sticks it on the shelf, it's marked for the technician, and the service advisor doesn't know what a water pump looks like. She knows I got my part, right? Well, technician comes in, they're going to get the job done. This is like a 4 o'clock on a Friday type of thing. 4 o'clock, water pump is already out. He's going to put the new water pump in. Now it's 4:45, and he opens up the box and realizes he doesn't have a water pump. He has a windshield washer pump for the Jeep. It was a new service advisor, and then the new service advisor said, "Well, I talked to Joe at the parts house," and she's like, "No, you don't ever talk to Joe. 95% of the parts he gives you is the wrong part." Right? So that's
Yeah,
one
so
aspect of it. But the great thing these days is utilizing these electronic parts catalogs can make your life a lot easier as long as you understand how to use them. Right?
Yeah, and like I said, technology has changed a lot of that, but still building that relationship with your
Yep.
parts company. When you have that relationships, they help you, you help them, and it all works out there. Sometimes we base a lot of our parts company stuff based on price. Price isn't what we should be judging our parts company on. Do I got a quality part that is warranted, and how fast do they get to me? What service do they get me? Because let's be honest, the price of that part you're going to pass on to the customer anyway.
Yep.
And I know each and all of you out there have big hearts on your shoulders and you want to save your customers as much money as you can. But by saving them money, are you creating headaches for yourself? That's what you need to look at.
Yeah. Yeah. It's anytime you can save a few minutes here and there makes up the big picture for the day. It gets back to certain things that are taught in the controlling the front class. Start your day with a written plan. Where are we at? What's going on? What's going on with the vehicles that are in the shop? This keeps track, your progress board to like I showed you, but it's like, what are we doing with that progress board? How are we looking at things? And I just want to go. I'm just going to show you something really quick again because I like to share my screen here. So, digital workflow is an awesome thing as long as you know how to use it. And here's just an example of digital workflow where I know what's going on with the vehicles in the shop. And all of these systems will keep track of these things as long as you set them up. And it takes a little bit to do that and get used to it and work out the kinks. As a matter of fact, there's a bunch of other different choices I have here. But since I don't have anything in those categories, as long as I know how to use the system, I can bring it down to what I got in the shop, what's going on with them. And now just looking at these tiles, I can see there's 3 different jobs on this vehicle that needs to be done, this Silverado here, and I can see that 3 of them are in progress. And 9.9 hours, he's halfway through with the job. I can easily see what's happening. I can get an idea what's going on with things in the shop just by looking at the screen here to see where I'm at. And this is an ever-changing situation and scenario, isn't it, David? As far
Yeah.
as the day goes, it's you can have the greatest plan in the morning, but by shop opens at 8, by 8:15, guess what happens? It's all blown out of the water.
Somebody's gonna throw a grenade in there and it's gonna blow up. But how you keep that chaos organized
Yep.
and how you can stay calm, cool, and collected. And that even goes for your service writer. If they stay calm, cool, and collected at no matter what's thrown at them, their days are going to be a lot get better. They're going to be a lot productive. And that's tools as an owner you have to not only train into your employees, but you have to provide them the correct tools to do these jobs, the right policies, the right procedures, and have the right conversations with your employees so that they all are on the same page. Because if all it takes is one employee to disagree with a procedure or a policy you put into place, and it can ruin that procedure or policy for everybody in the shop. That one employee grumbling in the back and getting every other technician to agree with them that we shouldn't do it this way, and then everything goes out the door. So the big thing is making sure you got agreement across your whole staff that they all agree this is the way we should do it. This is the most efficient way. This is the best way to do it.
Yes, and it's interesting too that when you have pushback, a majority of the times you get the pushback because it's a lack of understanding. It's not because the person's trying to be a pain in your butt. It's that they don't fully understand something. And I'm going to give you an example of something that I ran across. There was a shop where they were one of the rules: inspect every vehicle that comes through the shop. This new technician came from another shop and he's looking at it and he's like not doing inspections, and then he's not doing inspections, and they have these conversations: you got to do inspections, you got to do inspections. He's like, no, we don't have time, we don't have time, we don't have time. And the owner finally sat down with the guy one on one, because when you have something like this in a disagreement, the best way to handle a disagreement on something is one on one, not in a group setting. Take it out of the group, because a lot of times it becomes a whirlwind. Let's say the Tasmanian devil comes in and it can stir up a whole bunch of emotion, right? So if you sit one on one, and this is what the owner did, he sat down with the tech and finally said to him, I don't understand why you're saying you don't have time. I'm paying you 4/10 of an hour to do the inspection. They take about 20 minutes to do. They shouldn't be a long thing. He explained the whole process, but the guy still kept saying that. So the owner backtracked and said, okay, so why do you feel you don't have time? It's like, well, we have all these cars out there, and if I keep looking at them, I'm never going to get any of this other work done. And he goes, we're set up to be able to do that. This is what we do so we can service a customer better. And he kept asking questions as to where he got this idea from. And that's sometimes that's the simple way to do it is, so where'd you get the idea that you don't have time? And he goes, well, at the last shop, the owner, I'd be looking and I'd find things, like a leak or something going on. He goes, no, don't bother with that. We don't have time. Just fix it for what it's in for and get it outside. He was trained so much and beaten down so much by the previous shop that he worked at. He felt that he did not have time because of that. And that's what the problem was. And when the owner sat back and down and told him, said, no, he asked the tech this question. He said, did you ever have customers come back to your shop and complain that they have another problem with their vehicle after they picked it up? The tech goes, oh, yeah, that happened all the time. He goes, man, I stayed out of the office when that happened. He goes, I didn't want to be the target of that. And he goes, well, that's why we're doing this, because it cuts down on all of these complaints and problems that we have. So it's a reason why we do it. So it was a matter of educating the technician. He's like, oh, that makes total sense. And guess what? After that, he did inspections. You
Yeah,
know,
so Jim, while we're talking here,
yeah.
they're going to push a poll out to everybody, and please take a few minutes and answer just a couple quick questions when they push this poll out. But Jim and I will still continue to talk through this while you're taking this poll. But you're talking about the inspection line, and really, what I want you to understand is it's a very important part of the workflow. And it has so many breakdowns. Techs not doing the inspections, techs not completing the inspections 100%, service writers not communicating to the customers what is on those inspections and what they found and trying to upsell the work. I've seen just of recent days
Hmm.
a, a shop that has a great SMS system. They're using Drive's SMS system. Technicians are 100% doing the inspections,
Hmm.
and it's a digital vehicle workflow system. And the service writer was only sending out about 25% of the items found on the inspection through the DVI system to the customers. They had pictures, they had explanations, they had everything on what was wrong with the car, and the service writer was not sending them out to the customers.
Oh my goodness.
So, can you imagine how much more work they had? And I want you guys to also manage. I heard this one talk to the other day. He said, um, "Well, David, our shop's so busy. We get a car and we find additional work. We can't get it in and out that day, so we reschedule it for later the week." Well, I'm glad you're rescheduling, at least capturing that work. But let me put this to you. How frustrating is that as a technician? You have a car on the rack that you're working on, you found other stuff on it, and the service writer thinks your day's too booked, so they book it for next week. So now, not only do you complete what work you were doing, you take the car off the rack, go back out, park it in the parking lot, write everything up on it so that the customer can be billed for what you did right now. Customer comes back next week, you got to pull the car back in, put it on the lift, and start back where you were a week ago.
Yeah, and the interesting thing too is when you look at it, there was a shop, no, known the client for a long period of time. Actually, when I was a client, I'd known him that long, right? When I had my shop. Anyway, one of the things he does, he has a lack of room. So technicians can't leave a vehicle in the bay. It's really simple. They have 5 bays in the shop, there's 4 technicians. They have one extra bay that they use for quick stuff, and they share that bay, but every technician has their own bay. So they have the issue of they need to look at a vehicle, they need to put it outside, get approval from the customer. It's just a fact of the space that he has to use. So what he did is he set a policy for the shop, and it was very simple. Any vehicle that came in at 8 o'clock was inspected by 10 a.m. And what the technicians would do, and even they went even to an extreme on this, vehicle come in for an oil service and checking the vehicle over, maybe a couple of minor complaints. The tech would bring the vehicle in, check it all over, do the inspection, write everything up, put that vehicle back outside and do the next one. And they'd get through those inspections quickly. And as they did that, then the service advisor would put the estimates together, sell the jobs, and then redispatch the work to the technician. His technicians did 50 to 60 hours in a week, in a 40-hour week. So the point is, no matter what your shop's like, there's a lot of different things that you can do to help with exactly what you're talking about, David.
Yeah.
So,
And like I said, when I started this whole webinar off, we talked about we're selling build hours.
yeah.
That's what we're selling and that's what we're looking at. And you got to look at everything that affects selling those build hours from top to bottom. And just moving on through the workflow, QC. It's a part of the workflow that a lot of people sometimes skip or sometimes are light on.
No, they do QC on that difficult problem that they don't want to come back. And
Yeah,
thank you
so
everybody for completing the poll. We do appreciate that. Sorry, David, go ahead.
Yeah, so QC is another one that I see, and it's just a matter of creating a habit. Having somebody else test drive the vehicle or somebody look at the vehicle after you completed the work. No matter how small or how big the job is, somebody's always overlooking a job. Because the worst thing you can have is your customers be your QC line. And believe me, it's just as frustrating for the technician, for the service advisor, and for the customer. Customer leaves, something's wrong, they bring it back. Technician's got to stop on the job that they're on to recheck that vehicle.
Goodness.
It creates so many inefficiencies in there. Just by having somebody else check the vehicle when they were done with it, they could have eliminated all that and didn't have to interrupt the whole workflow system on it. So put a good QC system in your shop. Make sure a technician is double checking their work, or another technician's, they swap off. I check your work, you check my work. Service writer does a visual check of everything before they call the customer and have them pick it up. It's just a good policy and a good procedure in it. And it saves you so much time because one, and yes, a lot of times these comebacks are simple. It don't cost the shop a lot of money. You go in, you pull them back in and fix them. But what you don't realize is it costs a lot of time and a lot of frustration and the stopping and pulling off a technician to look at it, put them back on their job when they're done with it. So, get a good procedure in place for that.
I'm looking, I'm looking to see if I don't have anything here to show you, but here, I'll use this as an example. So I was at a shop. This exact thing happened. They get the car done for the customer. Customer comes to pick it up. First time the customer was in, she goes and pays for the vehicle, goes outside. She comes back in. She brings this piece of plastic in. She goes, "Yeah, this was on the floor of my car, and it doesn't belong to my car, so I don't know what that is. And do you possibly have a rag so I can wipe off the grease that's in the center console of my car?" Now the service advisor apologized and he gave her a rag, which to me was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you're doing this. But he was going to take the plastic cover and throw it out. Now I'm looking at it and she had a Toyota. It said Toyota on the darn thing. It was a cover for the cabin air filter. So somebody had pulled the cover out, never put it back in. And here's what happened. Because they were busy, the owner went to help and pulled the car in and did the first step of what they do when they do their procedure is they would pull the cabin air filter out, and if it was dirty, they left it on the bench so they could take a picture of it to show the customer. So the owner helped by doing that. And then he went off to do something else. The tech starts doing the car, never looked to see that the filter was out, never put it back in, never wrote it on the repair order that needed a cabin air filter. Now, they saved the customer. They gave a customer, they actually gave her a complimentary cabin air filter for the issue and sent her on her way. And she still was very happy, believe it or not, which was kind of crazy. But the point is, they had a system in that shop. The owner who put that system in didn't follow the system and created the issue. But
Yeah,
this happens
and
all the time.
that brings a good point up, Jim. And this will be, I know we're coming up on our hour, but I
Mm-hmm.
want to bring this up. Most of the time, what I've seen in shops, and I was guilty of this myself, the owner is the one that violates the workflow process. The owner creates problems. And I'll explain some other situations, just like you said, they tried to help, they thought they were being helpful. But another one is the owner's friend shows up,
Backdoor
bypasses the
bandits.
bypasses the service advisor, pulls the car up in the bay and tells Joe, go over here and take a look at this real quick.
Yep.
Owner's friend, owner's wife, owner's mother. It happens all the time. When you do that as an owner, you are interrupting the workflow process of the whole shop and creating distractions. You're creating lost time. You're creating a lot of different things. So think this through before you do these kind of things. Are you following the system you put in place? Are you making them go through the service writer? Are they being dispatched? Anytime you're bypassing workflow for that you put in place,
Yeah. Yeah.
to it's a distraction and it creates a problem for your shop that costs you a lot of money. So if
I,
you put policies and procedures in place as the owner, you've got to follow the policies and procedures yourself. You cannot bypass them.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing. That backdoor bandits, I said that because that's exactly what the technicians and the front staff called these customers who would walk in the back door, go to the owner in his office that was not by the front counter. They knew where he was, friends and such. He'd go out there with him and did exactly what you did. He'd pull a technician off a job that a customer was waiting for or was needed to get done today, and they're pulling a technician off to start looking at my friend's car or whatever because that customer came in. And the owner was he had a horrible habit of doing that. So backdoor bandits, you can avoid them for sure. And David, this gets back to things, systems that you put in place, and Danielle made a point of some of the things that were laminated. One of the awesome things that I recommend you laminate or create is a chart for the workflow, how things are supposed to flow through the shop, different sections of it. Everybody in this industry, the folks that are in this industry are visual. So if we can just show them how this thing should go, it's a lot easier when you have to make corrections, when you have to drill and practice these things. That's another thing, because it is crazy how, when do these things drop out? As a matter of fact, it's very interesting. It's not necessarily when you're busy, it's when you're slow. And then you develop bad habits and you stop doing things. And all of a sudden, these wonderful systems that you have in place actually fall out. So it is a constant thing to keep in place, having these tools to do it, the training, and people need to be reminded of these things. And you make a game of it, have fun with it, create a culture in your shop where everybody understands that training is an ongoing thing. Heck, training is an ongoing thing for everybody, right? So we
Yeah, and
are.
just a
Yeah,
final thought on that,
yeah,
just
go
a
ahead,
final
David.
thought as we wrap this webinar up. I'm going to say right now, workflow that works. This is what we were talking about all day, but I'm going to tell each and every one of you in here, workflow will be your constant thing that you have to keep an eye on and you continuously adjust in your shop. The size of your shop, the number of employees, the service writers, the procedures, the technology, everything changes. Workflow isn't one thing that you put into your shop and set it and forget about it. It will constantly be something you have to, it evolves. It evolves every day, and you constantly have to update it. You constantly have to listen to your employees. You constantly have to look at what it will make us more efficient and what serves our customers better. And how do we get more build hours out of the crew we got working with us today? And that's what you need to be looking for. What works in Jim's shop may not necessarily work in my shop. So you've got to really look at your workflow and dial it into your people, your shop, your location. And yes, there's a lot of systems out there that standardize a lot of this stuff, but there's still, even with systems and stuff, you've got to tweak things to your location and
Yeah,
make it yours.
yeah, you make it yours. It's a concept. There's pieces of the concept. It's like you have all these vehicles running down the road. They all do the same thing, don't they? They all do them a little bit differently, don't they? So it's just understanding that and refining it, making it your own. And it's continually a work in progress as you move up the stages with your shop and improve what you got going on. And the better that you are at doing this and documenting things along the way, the easier it'll be for your transition through the stages to whatever you're trying to achieve with your shop. So, wow, that was
Yes. So,
a lot, and we could continue to go on. But David,
yeah.
it was awesome working with you on this,
Well,
and hope we've helped you guys out. I appreciate some of this the sentiment there. We're here to help you. I mean, David, I know you are. I am the same way. We're here to help you folks to get better control of your businesses, get better control of what's going on there, so you can do the things that you want to do and have a better quality of life for you and everybody else that you deal with. So we
yeah.
hope we've helped you out, and looking forward to seeing you on the next one.
Yeah, agree. And it's been a pleasure to help everybody out here. And just one last thought for me is if you are a shop owner on this webinar today and you are a Drive client, look, we cover this all very extensively in the Controlling the Front workshop, which is a multi-day workshop that we offer to Drive clients. If you're not a Drive client right now, we have a service called the Shop Business Analysis, and they will actually evaluate your workflow, come back through and give you the results of that and how you can improve it. So reach out to us here at Drive. Either way, we're here to help you. We want to see you succeed. We want to see you be profitable, and we want to see your shops doing very well.
Yes, and on one final thing as well, David, that just popped into my head, because that's what happens these days. As I get a little older, things fade and they come back. I'd love to see all of you at the expo this year in Vegas, because it's a great place to come to get rejuvenated, to talk with like-minded people. I enjoy it. I have so much fun at the expo, because we're here to help you out. So come be part of it. Find out, talk to anybody you can. There's a link here to Henry. He can help you out as well. The point is, we're here to help you folks out. Expo is something we do every year. and it's going to be awesome this year. We have some classes available beforehand too for our clients. Find out about it. Come be part of it. It's in September, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you all there.
Yes, agree
All
with you,
right.
Jim, and everybody have a great day and a great rest of the week.
Yes, folks, and we appreciate you coming. Thanks, and see you next time.